Caroline was talking to me about a website that she was planning to upgrade and to use SEO-matic, or she was thinking about it. And my understanding is that it already uses a combination of some custom SEO metadata as well as Sprout SEO. Is that correct?
Yes, the custom SEO data came from a migration in from possibly Joomla or WordPress, older platform. When the site arrived on Craft, the site was handed to me at some point following that, with the goal of getting SEO into the forefront of the priorities, but a lot had to be done ahead of time. So I did all that, right? And we're a few years along at this point, and we're finally ready. The thing is,
a few years, wow.
Well, it was a whole front end change. I had to learn view and add view features to the site.
Yeah.
There was a lot in there that was really a priority over let's watch the words, which is more or less like what you're doing with SEO.
Yeah.
So now that we're doing that, it comes to my attention that not only is this site kind of a mess, but it would really be the first order of work is really to unmess it and then to work with it, not to work with the mess.
Agreed.
So in doing so, I did my research and looked at SEO-matic and said, it would be great to use this. It looks like it promises a lot, but I just cannot lose rankings for some things. And Andrew says to me very smartly, just install it. It works. And I'm like, well, that's not really the point. I have things to move into it potentially.
Right.
Things that I can't lose, things that are like highly important. So it became a question of, how does Andrew help me, or does he help me? A lot of plugin developers would just walk back and say, I've got a rate for that. Or they would say, I don't really handle this kind of request, or, here's my other buddy, you can pay him to do it, or like whatever it is. But I really want to learn this. I consider myself an SEO specialist at this point. It's important for me to do the right thing the first time and to get the right help with that. And I think there are, at least Andrew has saw that perspective and was like, okay, let's do this. Let's walk through it. And then he's like, you want to stream it? I'm like, okay.
Yeah, this wasn't exactly planned. For anyone who's watching, we didn't necessarily plan to stream this, but in talking to Caroline, I said, this could be something that other people might be interested in, and it might help some other people, so why not? And I asked her if she was game, and she said she was, so everybody be gentle. We're kind of, winging this a little bit here. But so let's just talk a little bit in general about SEO and about how SEO-matic works, okay? And let's just frame what's going on a little bit here. So I think one of the most important things for your rankings, which is what you're concerned about, is the content that is on your site and also the URL structure that is on your site. And that's not going to change, right? So regardless of what you do, that's not going to change. So those two things are critically important, right? And any backlinks that are already there, those are going to go to your URL structure. So we're not talking about changing that. Right, we're not talking about.
It was definitely part of the years of work that we did before this. We got to this point ready to jump.
Yeah, and I would say that's some of the most important stuff, that you've done the content authoring in terms of making good content available, that you've structured it well, that all the URLs are set and all that kind of stuff. What we're really talking about here, when we're talking about installing SEO-matic, is we're really talking about what I would kind of consider to be the last 10 to 20%, maybe,
Really?
Yeah, because, it really depends on. SEO is one of those things that Google, to some extent, is a black box. There are people that make their livings out of, measuring what goes in the box and what comes out of the box. But I think that one of the most important things that you can have is good content that is presented and structured well. And what we're talking about doing here, and let me just clarify. So I want to make sure that I have this correct. So the site right now, it's a combination of some custom Twig code that does some metadata stuff, right? And also
just
Sprout
template tags. Yes, there's a little bit of custom stuff in there I'd never seen anywhere else, but it looks really, really built in. Like they did everything Sprout did. So it's also a good primer for what that one can do as well.
Right. So in other words, this site already has some kind of custom SEO, and then also has some Sprout SEO installed to do its thing, right?
Mhm.
So let's talk a little bit about the way SEO-matic works. So one of the methodologies when I was designing this was that modern SEO really is derived from content. Like the days of keyword stuffing are over. The days of trying to write, tricky little headlines here and there to make it rank, it just isn't going to work as well because Google has gotten better and better at digesting and understanding pages. So a lot of the old kind of tricks that people relied on just aren't really that relevant anymore. They were relied upon because Google wasn't that great at understanding content. So it kind of had to take your word for it in terms of what was there. But that has the game has changed in that regard. So the take that SEO-matic does is that the SEO that it is generating should pull from the content, right? It shouldn't be this separate entity that lives somewhere else. You can write your own custom titles if you want. That is not going to help you in terms of ranking. It could help in terms of getting people to click through on a search engine result page, for instance, if you wanted to write that headline in a nice, enticing way. I think that it makes sense a lot of times that if you are rewriting the headline to be better, something that people respond better to when they see it in the search engine results page, it's probably better that you change the actual headline to be what that is too. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So rewriting the headlines, for instance, or the SEO title or the SEO description, those aren't going to help you in terms of ranking. You're not going to lose ranking because you do a terrible job with that. What you could potentially lose is click-through. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do disagree with that a little bit. There is a lot of data that says that exact keywords and titles for exact searches is the goal. It's sort of how you get to the absolute apex of that. Like you write a good title, it's very direct, but then if you happen to be trying to rank for 2 or 3 things, like not just authenticity for our example, but also depression, you might want to include all of those, even though they're not in your article title, in at least some of your metadata in order to map into the other things that are also supporting you on that keyword. It's a big old thing, but for 80%, 90%, what you're saying is absolutely right.
Right. So for long tail searches, you do have a point. And just to be clear, when we're talking about SEO keywords, we're not talking about the keywords meta tag. That is something that is ignored by Google. And in fact, you can get punished negatively if it looks like you're stuffing that keywords field. So that's something. There are other bots that do look at it. I think Bing still looks at it. So I think it's fine to generate something. But again, this is where I think it makes sense to generate it from the content. So getting back to what we were talking about. So if you did want it to rank for certain things in the search, like a specific kind of depression or whatever, it may make sense for you to actually put that in the real title of the article as well, and basically to have something. Google looks at your site, and there's. I'm not even going to pretend to say that I understand the algorithm. I don't even know if there's a single person on the planet that knows the entirety of the Google algorithm. Maybe there is. I don't know. But what it tries to do is establish trust and credibility, and there's a huge number of factors that go into that. There's link backs, there's references, there's all kinds of stuff, and one of them is if what you're saying should appear on the search engines page reflects what is in the content of what is on that actual page. Google is like, oh, okay, I trust these people. What they're saying is in here is really in here because they don't want it to be deceptive.
Yep.
So what we want to talk about is how we can then take this existing site that is using a combination of custom stuff along with Sprout SEO and convert that over to using SEO-matic. And the only reason I went into this stuff about the philosophy behind it or whatever is that SEO-matic can be set up in such a way that every section, it pulls the SEO title, the SEO description, the keywords, all that stuff. It will pull that from existing content. And from the brief look that I saw at one of your pages, it looks like they had custom fields that were defined for a number of these things. Is that correct?
Just 4, and the rest of them are all generated out of the add-on.
Mm-hmm.
which I would assume yours does the same thing, but I don't know which to eliminate and which to keep, at least until the change happens and then I watch results. That's part of the SEO job. It's really never outsmarting this thing. It's watching it go and then doing another thing and watching it go a little differently.
Right.
And that's what I like about it, because I mean, it's not that the pressure's off. It's just that it's a practice. It's not a perfect. So
yeah,
that's
for sure.
That's a silly thing to say, but so with this, I'm looking at something you can't see, and that is the I will bring you. Actually, why don't I just bring everybody to this page?
Yeah,
it's going to get a lot of hits today. I'm looking at an example that is an older article on the site, and it ranks really well. It actually ranks number 1 or 2 for authentic self, just about everywhere I've looked for it, which is exciting. But we definitely don't want it to die. This is like one example of a critical thing that we should not, that I should be watching. So looking in the inspector, there's a whole bunch of stuff in the head, tracking, that kind of stuff. And then we get to imported metadata. That's from the original import into Craft. So there's content here, which means this is an oldie.
Do you want to share your screen or?
I can, yeah. As long as everyone wants to look at code. I know that's one of those things.
Well, if it's up to you. So if we're going to be referencing code, it probably will make sense to do it. And if we're not, we can just go back to it.
Okay, so let me know if you can see that I'm highlighting something.
Yep.
Or, okay.
It's a little small.
Okay. I don't.
Command plus will probably make the window, it'll zoom the window in.
Really? Oh, look, I'm learning something.
Keep going. Keep going.
Okay.
Maybe 1 or 2 more. I know it seems ridiculous. All right, one more.
Oh my gosh, it's so big now.
I know. There you go. Perfect. Perfect.
All right.
No, that's too big. That's too big. Go back. Dial it back. Dial it back.
Command minus. Did that do it?
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's readable to me, so it probably is readable to anyone else. So yeah, okay. So you were on and nobody's heard it yet, but you were on our Dev Mode show, talking to my friend and former employee Tom Anthony, who he has been doing SEO for a living for a long time, and he does A/B testing on stuff. What I would totally do if I was using his A/B testing tool, just for fun, for me as an experiment, is I would delete the SEO description and the SEO title stuff from this page, and just on a small sample of stuff, and would see if it changed any of the rankings on it. And it would be a really interesting experiment. I'm guessing that it wouldn't change the rankings much at all. But it would be interesting to see what the actual result is. But so you're looking at for instance, the description here, right? And
so yeah, just giving a quick tour of this. It's like the imported meta things are here. So it's description and keywords. It's not 4, it's 2, or maybe there's another couple of them in the. No, it's just the 2. And then more imported stuff from. And so all of this, and if you look at the SERP for this page, it compounds them. So there's another meta description down here, as well as this one. Clearly, I don't need to, but this is, we're getting started on this site in the SEO department like today. Like none of this has been done because there have been other very
so it has 2 descriptions up there?
It does.
It's
got this imported one, and then it's got one that they wrote after, not knowing that this one was here.
I'm almost betting.
So these are.
That's what I'm saying. Like if you just deleted the descriptions, and one of them looks clearly worse than the other, right? So one of them is much shorter and doesn't seem very interesting. Although it might be more clickbaity, right. The one with the question mark, find out here, whatever. It's just you're sending a really ambiguous message to Google. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, well,
totally.
Which one do you want me to use? And fun fact, I know you probably know this, Caroline, but some people listening may not. When you put stuff in the SEO description field here, if Google thinks your description sucks, it's just not going to use it. So Google is absolutely capable of ignoring whatever you put in your meta description field and using its own summary that it has extracted from your page. And it will do that. And I wonder if it will do that in this case. Are you seeing your actual description appear on the SERP? And if so, which one of the two tags shows up?
Well, like, okay, so this is like got a major number one thing, and it's also, I think, got a magic snippet. It's not the right name, but
Rich snippet.
Rich snippet.
Yep.
But if you going to Googling authentic self here, I can stop sharing and then I can like switch the tab, because unfortunately, can you put like the inspector in the tabs of your browser? That would make this a lot simpler, but I don't think so. So this is a view of Moz, and this is showing that the ranking for this authentic self keyword is really important, because not only is it number one, but this volume of like 1,700 potential per month, and obviously it's difficult because it gets a lot of volume. It's important to this client to keep this.
Okay, so which is this the domain? Is it therapyinphiladelphia.com?
It is, and we're getting ready to switch this domain as well. So shoring up this game is like we're about to take on some risky sort of changes to this site. So
what is in the actual SEO description tag for this page?
Let me see.
Because I'm looking at what I'm seeing appear here, and I'm just curious what is in the actual one.
Oops. Well, that works. What is it? What it means to be your authentic self?
No. What I mean is, if you view the source of the page, like we were doing before, I want to see what the description tags are that are in there. And is it what is actually appearing on the SERP?
It is, but it's compounded. It takes the first one and then ... the second one, it strings it right on. So let me get that window for you. This giant window with giant text. So we've got to be authentic means, and then we've got what does it mean to be your authentic self? So I guess I got it backwards. It takes the second one, and then authentic self means to be your authentic self. So we've got the first one in the second description, and then we've got the second one.
See, that's not what I'm seeing. That's not what I'm seeing here. And this gets to my point. Okay?
Yes.
I think what it is taking here is neither of your SEO descriptions. And I think it says, I don't like either one of these. It's confusing me. It's giving me mixed messages. I don't think these are good. I think it's throwing out what you have in your meta tags, and it's pulling it from your page. I'm pretty sure that...
Why would it do that for a number one result, though? I mean,
but so this gets back...
supposed to be the best one?
This gets back to what I was saying before, which is that if you just deleted these tags, I don't think your ranking would be affected in the slightest. Not even a little bit.
It's a really good point.
Right?
It's a really good point.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is where I'm getting at in terms of SEO-matic will do a ton of stuff for you, right? But it really is the last 10 to 20% in terms of dotting the I's, crossing the T's, making everything as good as possible. But if you have content that ranks really, really well, and it's going to find it and it's going to use it, right? So this is kind of what I'm getting at is I would look at getting SEO-matic set up so that you pull from the content that's on the site, just like Google pulled from your content for its description, And what I would do is I would go through, and in SEO-matic, there's a content SEO that is going on there. And in fact, let me see if I can do this real quick. I wonder what happens if I drag this tag in.
I was say, meanwhile, SEO-matic isn't installed on here right now.
Right.
Maybe it's time to look at what happens when I do install it.
Well, let me show you what you can do, and then we can talk about...
Okay.
Oh, it's not letting me... Oh, there we go. Okay. So whatever.
So we had enough technical difficulties.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's a long story, but I'm using a teleprompter here. But anyway, if you look at the YouTube page, actually, I'm being a dummy. I should have just shared the screen, shouldn't I? All right. Yeah. You know what? Let me do it that way. I'm being silly.
Okay.
Oh, my God. All right. We don't need full screen. All right. There we go. All right.
I just had to exit full screen too. Yeah.
All right. Present now a window. And boom. All right. This is going to make more sense because you're going to be able to see it now too, which makes sense.
Yeah, I'd like to follow along.
Assuming I clicked the right thing.
Oh, that's great.
Let's see if I did.
Yeah, it's good. I see it.
All right. So this is the SEO-matic dashboard that's on here. And the way SEO-matic works is that it's got a little dashboard here that just shows you, how set up do you have everything, all that kind of good stuff. There is global SEO, where you set up basically the site-wide defaults for everything, right? So if there's nothing more specific, it will use whatever is in the global SEO. And, all right, they're saying they don't see it.
No, rats.
All right.
Guess what? I got you video.
Okay, fine. I'm streaming right now. You gotta chill out, okay?
Oh, hi.
Don't encourage him.
Okay.
Why? Now, when I share this, you see it? Is that correct, Caroline?
I do. It looks like it's on. It looks like you're sharing now, and I'm on the muted version of the YouTube, and it's going right up. There it is for you. Or you're presenting to everyone. It says stop presenting. I can see your thing. It looks like it's only streaming your side.
Yeah. No, I know what's going on. I'll fix it. I just have to find the window now. Global SEO, SEO-matic. Wow, that's crazy. My window is actually gone. I don't know where it is. Stop, Tyler. All right. My son's trying to give me hints about trying to find the window.
Honestly, though, if I had rings like that in my office or my parents' office, I'd be wanting to get on them all the time.
Yeah. All right. So now people are going to see nothing. Where is this silly window? How does it even make sense?
New software doesn't make sense. Everyone's like, switch to Table Plus, switch to Table Plus. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. And it's like, how do people operate in this again? Give me my old stuff.
Tyler, where's my window? No, see, this is the one that I want. I select it.
There's no graphic user interface. You just have to tell it.
No, it's literally nowhere. It's like oh, there it is. I see. It's at the way bottom of this thing. Okay. All right. So you are still able to see it, right, Caroline?
I can, yeah.
All right. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to combine these two. And then we're going to have to move this up. There we go. All right. Gentlemen, I apologize. I had some tech fail. So I am late doing this. So we're going to have to postpone it today, okay? We'll make it up tomorrow, okay? We have to leave at 5:40 to get you to Code Ninjas. And Jack, you're coming with too because you've got Ninja Warrior tonight, okay? All right. I will see you guys at 5:40. All right. Yay. All right.
Woohoo.
Actually, we're going to go like this. We're going to get all sorts of fancy about this. And we're going to pretend that we know what we're doing. All right. So up here, this is you and I chatting. And then here is that window. We're going to go full screen on there. Great. Now I can switch back and forth between them. Right? Very fancy. And let me
Oh,
just
wow, yeah.
make sure this is on full screen. There we go. Okay. So I'm just going to do it this way. Are you able to look at the YouTube video just to see what I'm talking about? Is that all right?
I am, and I'm observing it. It looks like it's doing exactly what you're describing.
Yeah, sorry. This is what... There we go. Okay. So getting back to what I was saying, SEO-matic, the global SEO is the settings for everything that if you don't provide anything more specific, that's what it's going to end up using, right? Then content SEO is the next...
Can we see what's on that page, or are you going to go like further?
You want to see what's on? I mean, it's everything.
Yeah. Well, okay.
But yeah, I can go through it. So the general settings has whatever the main entity of the page is, which is used for the JSON-LD. It has the source that you're using for the SEO title. And in my case, I'm using custom text, so I just entered this in here. You can also do from fields, which it will pull from global fields, which I don't have any, so none are going to appear. The site name position, the SEO description source. So this is where it's going to, again, pull the description from. I'm just using custom text, but you can pull content from an existing field, or you can do summary from a field. And this actually uses a text rank PHP package that it pulls out the three most relevant sentences from the content that you pass down to it. So it's a nice way.
How does it decide what that is?
It has some kind of crazy lexing algorithm in it, and it actually does a really good job. But I don't know.
Okay.
But anyway, it's there. You know, if you want to use it.
Sure.
I usually use that. So for specific individual pages, I will set it for custom text like I have here. But then when we get into content SEO, we'll take a look at what I do for blog pages and that type of thing. Keyword source, and again, this is something that it will automatically determine the most relevant keywords from a field if you want, and just pull those out. It's a great way to do it. If you have existing content, just say keywords from field. You can even point it at a content builder matrix block thing, and it will concatenate all of the matrix blocks together and pull out the most relevant keywords for you. But you can see a theme here is that you can either enter something custom, or you can pull from an existing field, or you can optionally pull, keywords or summary or that type of thing from an existing field. And you can do that for pretty much any of these things. And then this is the image is very similar. You can pull it from an asset field, a custom image, or a custom URL. And, a few other settings down here in terms of the image description for alt tag. Sorry, not alt tags, but it's a tag for the image description that's used in Open Graph. And then the canonical URL, robots, all that kind of good stuff. And then Twitter has what you would expect in terms of all the settings you would want for Twitter, like the type of card that you're going to be using. All of these things, you'll notice that they really lean heavily on pulling from existing stuff. So here it's saying just use the same as the SEO description, which is the default, right? So if you want, you can just leave the Twitter and Facebook settings to pull from the SEO description, and then you change it in one place and it changes everywhere. Or some people...
Which makes so much sense.
Yeah,
really.
Or some people want their own custom description for Twitter or for Facebook. Especially I've seen some people want their own special image, for that. So it'll let you do that too, if you want.
Right.
But anyway, these are the Twitter settings, the Facebook settings, everything you would expect. You get a little preview of what it's going to look like here. Robots it automatically will generate a robots tag for you that's environmentally aware, so it will make sure to not crawl in local dev and in staging, like it catches that for you. And if you're working on sites with multiple languages, the sitemaps it generates, it automatically handles multiple languages. It does a humans.txt, which is sort of the opposite of a robots.txt. It lets you just list the people that were involved in building the thing. Oh. Yeah, that's a mistake. I need to fix that.
There it is.
Awesome. Anyway,
nice.
So these are that's for ads.txt, which is it's sort of a ad authentication. It's for people that are running ad networks to make sure that things are authorized and whatever. I won't get into it too much. But that's the global SEO settings, right? So this is where you set all of the stuff that is the last thing for everything to fall back on if there's some kind of a problem. Now I want to get into content SEO. So what I have here is it will list every section, every category, every product group, all the kind of sections that you have in Craft. And it will give you just an overview of what you have set up. And we can take a look at, for instance, the blog, and we can see how that is set up. So here's a preview of what it's going to look like. The main entity of page here is an article, right, which makes sense. And what we're saying is, for the SEO title, pull that from the title of the blog entry, right? Makes sense. So in the SEO description for this page, it's going to have the exact same title as the title of the article with some of the other stuff added onto it. So in my case, I have like a pipe and then the site name added on to the end of it. And then you can set the position of this, and then so the description is a very similar thing. So what I'm saying is I want to pull the description from a field, and this field that I'm pulling it from is a handwritten blog summary field. Right? So this is something that I write myself. Now, another thing you can do is you can just set it to blog content, which in my case is a bunch of matrix blocks, and it will automatically just go through and pull it out from there. Keywords, I just have it pulling the keywords from the blog summary again. Could have it pulling from the blog content if I wanted to. And the SEO image, I have it pulling from the blog image, right? So you can see what's going on here is the content SEO settings, really what it's doing is it's pulling from stuff that is on those existing blog entries, right? So, for instance... Which
strengthens the result because it's consistent and authoritative. You
got it, exactly. The SEO is reflecting what's on the page, and you won't have a situation, or you're unlikely to have a situation like you had on your site where it's just ignoring what you put in the metadata, and it's saying, screw you, we're going to use what we found on the page,
But wait, there's more.
Yeah.
Now that you're in the content section, I'm looking at my code and seeing that this add-on is producing schema for all of these. It's producing a location schema.
Yep.
And it's okay, so you got that covered, it sounds like.
Yeah, it does all of that and more. And I'll show that to you in a minute. But I just wanted to show you, so this is the blog entry. So this is when I write those 5-minute reads, this is what it looks like on the back end for me, right? I got a title, I got a category, I got some tags that I add to it, there's my handwritten summary, and here's my blog image, and then this is just a bunch of content in matrix blocks, right? It's a very simple content builder that I made for myself. It does all that I need it to do, and that's where SEO-matic is pulling all of this information from for the SEO that's there.
Right.
And so you're mentioning schema. At least in the craft community, I was on the JSON-LD structured data way early on. I remember going up to Ben Parizek, and I found him at some random peers conference, and I pinned him against the wall, and I said, please, I need you to add JSON-LD structured data to your plugin. And he looked at me, he's just like, what? Who is this crazy person?
Was that the Florida one?
It might have been. He's like, security, get this person away from me. But anyway, it does generate tons of JSON-LD structured data. So you see here where I'm choosing the main entity of the page. This article thing is the structured data type that it is setting it to. And you can see here, I've got a huge autocomplete of every type that you could ever possibly imagine. It's got a really nice autocomplete search. So it's got everything under the sun directly from schema.org, right? So it does generate all that stuff. But anyway, what you can see here is the content SEO really is the same as what was in global SEO, but it applies specifically to this one particular content, or this one particular section, right? So when I'm pulling from fields, it's going to show me fields that are in this section, right? That I can pull this stuff from.
Of course.
Yeah. The other interesting thing that I'm going to show you real quick is SEO-matic. First of all, it has an entire API in Twig, so you can change absolutely everything in Twig. What it does is, based on the settings that you set in the CP, it prepares all of the metadata for you, and then it puts that into your templates, and then you can change any of that via Twig code that you want. And then when the page is finally rendered, it will render the result of that. So it's completely customizable. But the other thing that you can do is you can do something like this. So every field in here actually parses as Twig code. So if for some reason you don't like, actually this would be a better example. If for some reason you have to do something very, very specific, you can just put Twig code in here in this custom text. And you can see actually this is what it's actually doing under the hood, is it's calling an SEO-matic routine to extract text from a particular field, right? So let's say you wanted that.
And do you have documentation on the syntax or these kinds of utility helpers?
100%. Every single one of these helpers is documented. It's all there. But I could do something like this. I could do, let's say I wanted to do something like entry.title, right? So now I would have the entry title would be listed here with a dash, and then the extracted summary of the blog summary. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, of course.
Or sorry, this isn't a summary. It's taking the field content, but it's super powerful in that regard, in that you can do anything you want. I would encourage you not to in the beginning. I would start by just trying to set up all the mappings in the GUI. And the reason is, if you have some other specialists come in, they'll be able to change it, et cetera, et cetera. But you can do it. Every single one of these fields is parsable as Twig. You can go absolutely nuts with it and put anything in there that you might want.
Cool.
And you can also do this via Twig code on the page. So maybe there's something you legitimately don't want people to be able to change. Then it would be real easy for you to just do it in Twig, and you can change absolutely anything you want, including the schema. That's all in there. And there is a level more specific than this as well. And I think Sean in the chat is talking about it a little bit. There is also an SEO field that you can add on a per entry basis. And the thing that I want to stress about this field is that this is actually, and I'm going back to our heads up view, just so you know. So the thing about the SEO field is it's an override. All right, so the idea is you want to set everything up in global SEO. You want to set up the content SEO mappings. And then if you really, really, truly, honestly need to override something on a per entry basis, or if your client says, I really, really, really need to be able to custom write a title for this thing if I want to, then you set up an SEO settings field and you add it to that section, and you can control, out of everything you saw in the global SEO and content SEO settings, you can control which of those will appear. Okay, so you can say, no, you're only going to be able to change this, or you can give them everything that they can change. But the point is that those are an override, and that's kind of an escape hatch, that if they really do want that emergency override, they can do it. I recommend that they don't do it. I recommend that you set up the mappings so that it's always automatically pulling from the content, because inevitably what ends up happening is people have the intention of custom writing these descriptions, but then, they fall out of favor with whoever they were working with or whatever person was tasked with it, and they just kind of stop doing it. And that happens very, very often. And also, it's better if the SEO matches what is on your page anyway. So just set up the mappings. But if they really want to be able to override it, that's fine. Give them the field, and we can let them do that. I don't even think... I'm pretty sure that I don't even have an SEO settings field in here. I don't even think I have one. I don't even use it on this site. I don't. Yeah. I don't. I mean, I could show you it on another site, but it's basically, you set up the field and there's a little checkbox that lets you pick, which things do you want. And I would say be very stingy about what you give people control over. Like, the best way you can do it is set up those mappings in the content SEO to pull from the content and do a really good job setting that up. And if they really, really absolutely want to be able to handwrite a description, okay, add an SEO settings field, let them change or modify the description to be whatever they want. And because everything in that field is an override, if you leave anything blank, it'll fall back on the content SEO settings anyway, right? So that's why I would say set up the global SEO settings, set up the content SEO settings, and then if they stop using that SEO settings field or whatever, at least everything will have good, sane defaults that pull from the content, you know? But you can imagine it as a cascade where it starts at the most specific, which is the SEO settings field, and then it falls back on the content SEO, and then it falls back on the global SEO. And actually there is one level above that. So whatever you do in Twig will override anything in the field, and then anything in content SEO, and anything in global SEO. But it's like a cascade. And the idea is that we want to end up at a good place somewhere along that cascade, you know?
Right. Somewhere, something's going to catch it. And it's not going to be, even if it was completely ignored or even like shorted of time or whatever it is someone forgot, it's going to be covered in at least at 80 to 85%. And you can, custom override it even to the 95%. And then you can change specific words because people aren't searching for, I don't know, home site anymore. They're searching for property. So you change that and go up to the 100%. And you've got all those options.
Yeah. And again, if you set it up so the content SEO is pulling, when someone goes back in and edits the article, then the SEO can change to match it. And someone doesn't have to remember that, I changed the title here and I need to change it here. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm going to switch back to what we're looking at here real quick, because you had asked about the JSON-LD schema, and I definitely went crazy with that. So it's all there. I want
to see.
So this is the identity settings. So this is the identity of the page itself. So this is the name of the identity, and you can set the entity type. So this is a schema.org type. So I'm saying NY Studio 107 is an organization. And depending on the type that you pick here, you'll have more fields available to you. Like if there's a small business, you'll have an opening hours field where you can list the hours that they open or close, all that kind of stuff. Alternate name, description, entity brand, URL, telephone number, email address, street address, locality, latitude, longitude, DUNS number, like all this kind of good stuff is in here. Contact points is another.
For my own edification, is there anything specific for multiple location businesses in here?
There is not, but if you need that, you can do that in Twig. There are examples, I believe, in the docs or in an article I wrote on how to do that. But basically, any of the location information can either be a single entry or it can be an array of entries. That's just the way the schema.org spec works. So all you do is you write a little Twig code, and then you do whatever you need to do to pull out all of your locations, because I don't know how you have them stored. You could have them stored, any number of ways. And you just build that part of the schema yourself. And I've got plenty of examples of how to do that. In fact, there we go. I think you're gonna like this. Oh, I don't need a Finder window. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? All right. So if I go to the website that we're on now, and I do JSON-LD, so I've got a write-up on JSON-LD, and here are a whole bunch of real-world examples of using SEO-matic. And I've actually had a number of people that are learning JSON-LD. They're not using Craft at all, but they're referencing this site because it has some of the few concrete examples of how to do it. But so here are examples that are, I think some of these are taken from the NY Studio site. Some are taken from devmo.fm. But this shows you how you can grab the existing stuff and extend it by adding things to it. So here's an example. It's just showing you what it's outputting here. Right.
Wow.
So here's an example.
Good.
Here's an example of let's get the main entity of the page and let's add some stuff to it. So I'm adding an article section, I'm adding a genre, I'm adding a headline, and I'm adding a speakable specification. It's a CSS selector that is around everything that is speakable on the page for accessibility and that type of thing. But this is a way that I'm taking everything that I defined in the GUI that we were just looking at, and I'm saying, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that I want to add to it. So I'm just taking the existing entity and I'm adding stuff to it. And And so here's another example. Yeah, and I have every one of these. I've got like a SERP preview of it and the structured data testing tool example of it, pulling it out.
When you say you have it, is it in SEO-matic or do you have it sort of monitored somewhere else?
Have what monitored?
Like you said, you have it. Like you have it doing this. You have it.
No, this is an example of what the search engine result page is going to look like for this particular article page, for instance, using Google tools.
Okay.
You know, so I'm just showing you this is how it's going to appear, and yeah, right. So in the various.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Yeah, in the various structured data testing tools, and this is the, I believe, I can't see the bottom here, but I'm pretty sure this is the rich snippets testing tool that'll show you the result there.
Okay.
But this is a really
definitely good thing to have on hand.
Yeah, so it's a nice resource. So for instance, this is my plugins page for my site. So I'm adding offers, right? So here's the availability, it's in stock, the price, and then it's got the price of the plugin. These are all things that will appear if Google deems me worthy on the search engine results page, right? So we're adding a bunch of offers to it. Here we're doing, because these are, the main entity of the page it's a web application. Okay, right. So I'm giving it a category, it's a plugin, any requirements it has, download link, install link, tons of stuff. So every schema.org property is a fully qualified object in SEO-matic, and it will tell you what the properties are, whether it validates or not. Like there's a whole incredible amount of support for doing structured data stuff in SEO-matic. And so this article is a really good article for just looking at how can I take, if I really want to take the structured data to the next level and I want to do a whole bunch more with it, you know, how might I potentially do that? Here are some real world concrete examples of how to do that. And let me just see what else we got down here. I know there's some dev mode examples that are on here too. Here we go. So here's the about page for dev mode. And this right here, this output is what it does by default. Right? So it shows you first what you get out of the box for free on the FAQ page, for instance. And it's got the questions.
Wow, so the moment you set this up, it generates this much.
Yeah.
Without any sort of further doing. That's
right.
Great.
And then this is showing you, okay, this is how you can take this further and add a whole bunch of more stuff to it, right? So I wanted to add on the FAQ page, I wanted to add the questions and accepted answers. So here it's going through and it's doing some stuff and it's adding that to the FAQs page the way that it needs to. This is the episode.
Oh, wow. So your header and your FAQs page has the questions not only on the page text to find by the user, but also a version for computers in the head.
Exactly. Yeah.
Crazy.
Exactly. It's not in the head. It's in the body. But it's actually better that it's down there because the head is kind of really important. You want that to have only the information it needs ahead of time. So it puts the structured data before the closing body tag. But yeah, it's embedded in the document. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's embedded in the document. So here's all the stuff, for instance. So this is the each episode on devmode.fm has a JSON-LD type of radio episode, right? So here's all of the stuff that you'll get for free just by setting it up in SEO-matic, right? So it's automatically picking out all of this stuff for you. But we wanted to go a little bit further, and we wanted to add, you know, who are the people that are on this podcast. So this goes through and it shows you who are the hosts that are on here. And it will also give you the audio object, so a link to the actual MP3, the size of it, the encoding, all this kind of stuff. So yeah, all of that information, all of this is in there, and there's just an absolute ton of metadata. This is why I was saying, Caroline, you're in good hands here. If you're looking for something where you can just nerd out and go crazy with the structured data and stuff, you're in good hands here. There's tons and tons of stuff for you to do.
I've got the clientele for it apparently, so that's exciting.
Yeah. So getting back to kind of looping back to where we were before. And actually, I just want to read real quick. So Ransom is saying, do you have any advice for pulling SEO images out of entries using multiple fields as fallbacks? If not set, pull from a matrix block. Is SEO-matic able to do anything smart that I'm missing? What I don't know what you're doing, Ransom, so I don't know what you're missing, okay? But SEO-matic does have built into it a what I call the empty coalescing operator. So people are familiar with the double question mark, which is a null coalescing operator. Will take the first thing that is not null. The triple question mark, which is built into SEO-matic, gives you the first thing that is not empty. So you can say this field dot URL triple question mark, this other field dot URL triple question mark, etc., etc. And that's a really good way to do fallbacks, and that is in the documentation, like showing you a good way to do fallbacks that cascade in that way. And because you can
I wrote it down.
Yeah, because you can put twig in the SEO image field, for instance, you could just go crazy with whatever twig expression you want. The way that I do it is I get it working in, let's say I want a crazy custom twig that resolves to an SEO image for my blog template. What I do is I write that twig code in my blog template to make sure that it resolves, fix any errors, make sure everything is working the way that it should. And then once it's done and working, I copy and paste that into the field in SEO-matic. It's a lot easier to get the errors sorted out just in the template before you put it into the field and do it.
I didn't realize it translated that directly, and so that's what I'll probably do as well.
Yeah. And Matthew Loyal is saying, does SEO-matic add the triple question mark ability to all of your twig templates? Yes. It adds it to, so it's part of a separate plugin called the empty coalesce, I think is what the plugin's called. But it's also built into SEO-matic, so you can use that in any template. As long as you have SEO-matic installed, you can use that anywhere, and it actually is super handy. And I did a pull request with Twig a couple of years ago, and they ended up having certain requirements, and I just got lazy and didn't end up fixing it. But I wanted it to be part of Twig because it's super handy to be able to have an operator that just says, "Give me the first thing that's not empty." Forget about the first thing that's not null.
Now I feel less bad about not knowing it because I had no idea it was attached to your plugin. I thought everyone had access to that.
Yeah. Yep. So Matthew, it is built into SEO-matic, so you can use that in your templates, even though they have absolutely nothing to do with SEO-matic. It works by adding an operator to Twig. So as long as you have SEO-matic installed, you're going to get it, and you can use it anywhere in any of your templates. Yeah, it's not a problem. Yeah. But looping back to where we were in the beginning, so what I would do, you're going to have to audit your site because you got all this years of custom stuff mixed with another plugin stuff and everything. You're going to have to go through it and audit it. But I would set up the mappings in Content SEO to do a good job pulling from your content. If you want to, you could set up an SEO settings field that allows you to give your clients an escape hatch to override things on a per entry basis if they needed to. This is my personal approach. I avoid that until the client really says that they need or want it, just from my experience and what I have seen happen. And then also we didn't plan this, but this gave us a perfect example of what Google will do. Google said, I'm not looking at your meta tags. I'm not looking at any of that.
We like the stuff in there, but your metas are just,
right.
They smell.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm saying that I think having it match your content is going to be your best thing. I don't think that there is much that you're going to be able to do to that page or other page by altering the metadata around it to severely impact its rankings.
Right.
I think that with a little bit of care and consideration, it's only going to get better because SEO-matic does a really, really good job at generating the structured data, and I make sure all the, everything is covered in terms of anything that you might potentially want. The sitemaps, it even does image sitemaps for you. So we'll have a sitemap of your images or videos. Like it does all that kind of stuff for you. Yeah.
It just puts this stuff out. Like it's there, whether you link to it or not.
So anything that is added as an asset in an entry is going to be added to the image sitemap. And you can turn that off if you want. But it's kind of a nice thing to have on, I think.
I see it as one for free.
Yes.
I didn't even know about the image sitemap. So
yep, there's an image sitemap and
I
there's a
had not
video
got there
sitemap.
yet.
Yep, and it will automatically add those to the sitemap with the description of the image and the image name and all that kind of good stuff. So, yeah, for sure.
Great. Now it's time to pay attention to what we name the images.
Yeah, right. But does that give you kind of a plan going forward? You know, in terms of
Absolutely. I have like tons more confidence in like the process, and I feel like this will improve most of it. And actually, there might be a few that fall through. Like maybe this authenticity one, like suddenly it changes dramatically, and it's like, oh, we got to cut you, you know, but it'll come back. Or
right.
you know, I expect to see some punishment for changing a lot of things, but
right.
I'm not entirely sure how to quantify that or how to mitigate it completely. The key with all of this, I found, is just staying in with your hands in it, like every single day.
And
no
here's
vacations.
And here's the thing. So the scientific method is change one thing and see the result, right? The reality here is you can't do that. Like, you're going to be changing so many things at once, because you said you're changing the domain at some point. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on, right? So there's a lot of stuff going on, and you may not be able to directly attribute what is happening to a specific change that you're making. I think the most important part is that you're adding robust and correct tools that allow you to build out the SEO the way that you need it to be, and in a way that is clear and understood. And just by the fact that we had 2 description tags in here, like, it's going to get better by you doing the audit. And you
don't all have that. Old one does, but yeah.
You get what I'm saying, though, right? You know, like, it's going to benefit. Yes, there will be some minor changes, but you're making evergreen changes to this thing that is giving them a platform that they can use and build upon for years, you know?
Yeah, and they've wanted that all along, and to some degree they have that, and they just want it to get better. So the fact that you're saying this will become that, I think they'll be very happy.
Yeah. And it was designed in mind with permissions too, so you can set certain people can only access certain parts of the SEO settings. Like, you can do all those things. I don't know how big or small the organization is, but that can be useful to them. And the other thing, you know, and I got to put this out there, so you're using Moz to keep track of your stuff. The Moz.com website runs SEOmatic, just so you know.
Does it really?
Absolutely, it does.
They should send you a medal for that. Should wear it on live streams.
But, you know, that's something that you can use to make your client feel good about it and say, hey, look, the tool that I use for monitoring this stuff, they use the same plugin to power their website.
I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Well, Caroline, I hope that was helpful to you, and for everyone that was along the ride with us, I hope there was something here of use to you. And, you know, I think this video was good. I think we'll leave it out.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks so much for going through my project with me and covering all the bases. I have tons of confidence in this, and I know other people that watch it will too. Yeah,
and you'll have more questions as they come up, as you dig in, you know. But I'll put links on this video, and I'll give them to you for that article that I was showing with the JSON-LD. And there's also an advanced SEOmatic tips that is useful to take a look at as well. So we'll stay in touch. We'll get you sorted. Thanks for coming on.
Okay,
I appreciate
thanks so much, Andrew.
I appreciate you being brave and at the last minute saying, let's do it. Right?
It was fun. It was so fun.
All right. I am going to stop the recording now. And I'm going to give it just a couple of seconds, because what I've noticed is that it gets cut off otherwise. You know that little delay? If you stop it immediately stops recording on the other end.